Luxury yachts are seen as places of peace and comfort, but sometimes they become the setting for something much darker. In this video, we'll look at 5 real stories of disturbing deaths that happened on board. These are not accidents at sea. They are strange, unsettling, and in some cases never fully explained. What happened to these people remains a mystery, and it all happened far from land where help was too far away. It was August 19, 2024, off the coast of Porticello, a fishing village in northern Sicily. A 56-meter superyacht named Bayesian was anchored with 22 people on board, 12 guests and 10 crew. The trip was meant to celebrate tech billionaire Mike Lynch being cleared of serious legal trouble. Alongside him were his wife Angela and their 18-year-old daughter Hannah, who had recently finished school and was preparing to start university at Oxford. Lynch's close friends and longtime supporters were there too. Among them were Jonathan Bloomer, chairman of Morgan Stanley International, his wife Judy, and lawyer Chris Morvillo with his wife Nita. The group had gathered to unwind after a long and stressful period. By the evening of August 18th, the weather had begun to change. To stay safe, the yacht moved closer to Cefalù, hoping to avoid an incoming storm. The crew believed they had anchored in a secure area, but things quickly got worse. At midnight, winds were still mild, about 9 miles per hour. A deckhand was on watch. By 3 a.m., storm clouds were forming. At 3:55 a.m., wind speeds rose and the deckhand captured a video of the approaching storm. He posted it online before securing parts of the yacht. Within minutes, wind speeds shot up to 35 miles per hour. The anchor dragged and the yacht began to tilt. At 4 a.m., the captain was woken up and the crew jumped into action. Chef Ricaldo Thomas was last seen securing kitchen items and speaking with others. By 4:06 a.m., the storm had become violent. Winds reached over 80 miles per hour. In just 15 seconds, the yacht tipped to a 90-degree angle. Crew and guests were thrown across the interior. A deckhand fell into the sea. Some people tried to escape their cabins while others climbed into the main saloon, using drawers as makeshift steps. Panic spread. Survivors moved to higher ground and the captain gave directions to stay away from dangerous equipment. At 4:22 a.m., emergency beacons were activated. A crew member helped keep a baby afloat with a seat cushion. Survivors clung to wreckage in the dark water. The crew released a life raft and people with injuries climbed in. Flares were used to signal for help. At 4:53 a.m., another vessel, the Sir Robert Baden-Powell, spotted the flares and rescued 15 people from the water. They were cold, bruised, and shaken, but alive. 7 others did not survive. Mike Lynch, his daughter Hannah, the Bloomers, the Morvillos, and Chef Ricaldo Thomas were all lost. Thomas's body was the first found, discovered near the wreck. He was remembered by friends from Antigua as kind and warm. The Bloomers and Morvillos were found still inside the yacht. Examination showed they likely ran out of air while trapped in small pockets inside the vessel. They didn't make it out before help arrived. Lynch's body was found inside the wreck. He had recently been cleared in a major legal case and had hoped this trip would mark a fresh start. Hannah's body was recovered last. She was only 18 and had been excited to start university. Her sister described her as joyful, thoughtful, and loving. Angela Lynch said the first tilt woke them up, followed by complete chaos. British passenger Charlotte Golunsky, rescued along with her husband and baby, recalled holding her child above the water in total darkness for what felt like forever. The entire disaster unfolded in just 16 minutes. Investigators say a fast-moving mesocyclone caused the sudden storm. The yacht's keel wasn't lowered, and safety gaps in the manual may have left the crew unprepared for how quickly the vessel could lose stability. 3 crew members, including the captain, are under investigation but not charged. The yacht now rests 160 feet underwater. A Dutch diver died in an explosion during salvage efforts, and his death is under review. Experts hope the final recovery will reveal what went wrong and whether it was preventable. 7 lives were lost just miles from the shore. But when the storm hit, time simply ran out. It was November 15, 2004, in Newport Beach, California. Thomas and Jackie Hawks, both in their late 50s, had spent the last 2 years living aboard their 55-foot yacht, well-deserved. They had sailed across the Pacific Ocean and the Gulf of California, enjoying life at sea. But with a new grandchild on the way, they were ready to sell the boat and settle down. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out the way they had hoped. Thomas was a retired probation officer and former bodybuilder. He had 2 sons, Matt and Ryan, from a previous marriage. Jackie, his second wife, had helped raise them. When Matt announced he was going to be a father, the couple decided to return home and list their yacht for sale. That's when Skylar DeLeon contacted them, bringing his pregnant wife and young daughter. The Hawks were cautious but felt reassured by the family. DeLeon claimed he had money and once acted on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, hiding his past armed burglary conviction and darker intentions. He scheduled a sea trial for November 15th but brought 2 men, ex-jail guard Alonzo McChain and former gang member John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The Hawks didn't know them but trusted DeLeon. That morning, all 5 boarded the yacht and headed out to sea. It was the last time Thomas and Jackie were seen. According to court records, once they were far enough from the shore, things turned violent. The couple was restrained with duct tape and gagged. Thomas was forced to sign paperwork giving DeLeon control over the yacht and financial matters. After that, Thomas and Jackie were tied to a 66-pound anchor and pushed overboard while still alive. Their bodies were never found. When Well-Deserved returned without them, family members became alarmed. The couple had always stayed in contact, especially with a new baby on the way. On November 26th, their sons reported them missing. Investigators later discovered someone had tried to access their bank account from Mexico. DeLeon claimed he had purchased the yacht and that the Hawks had driven away with the money. He presented a signed bill of sale and a notary's signature, but the notary later admitted he was paid to lie. Soon after, the Hawks' car was found abandoned near a mobile home park linked to DeLeon. In March 2005, McChain confessed to police and told them everything. With his help, police arrested DeLeon, Jennifer, and Kennedy. Investigators learned that DeLeon had also taken the life of a man named John Jarvie a year earlier after convincing him to invest $50,000. That case had remained unsolved until then. Prosecutors said DeLeon's plan to kill the Hawks was premeditated, aiming to steal their yacht to fund personal goals, including gender transition. Jennifer brought their child to gain the couple's trust. In 2006, Jennifer got life without parole. Kennedy was sentenced to death in 2009. McChain, who cooperated, received 20 years. DeLeon, born John Julius Jacobson Jr., had a troubled past and brief stints in acting and the Marines. In 2008, he admitted to all 3 murders and was sentenced to death. While in prison, DeLeon began hormone therapy, changed his name and gender in 2019, and underwent surgery in 2023. To this day, the bodies of Thomas and Jackie Hawks have never been recovered. Their sons lost both parents, and the yacht was later sold. Their story was featured on 20/20 in an episode titled Overboard. Skylar DeLeon and John Fitzgerald Kennedy remain on death row. Jennifer is serving life in Chowchilla, and McChain is at Valley State Prison. Another associate, Myron Gardner, served 4 years as an accessory. What happened on Well-Deserved wasn't chance. It was planned from the start, ending in heartbreak that no one saw coming. It was August 30th, 2018, on the Greek island of Kefalonia. Sinead McNamara, a 20-year-old from Port Macquarie, Australia, was working as a crew member on a luxury yacht. She had spent the last 4 months aboard the Mayan Queen IV, a super yacht worth $190 million owned by Mexican mining billionaire Alberto Bayere. Through her Instagram, she documented her travels across Europe, sharing pictures of coastal towns and life aboard the yacht. Earlier that year, she had sold all her belongings to chase this lifestyle. And at the time, she was especially excited. Her mother and sister were flying to Greece to visit her. But that reunion never happened. On August 29th, the day before her death, Sinead made a distressed phone call to her family. She told them she had been in a serious argument with someone on board. She was crying. Later that night, she went out with some other crew members in Argostoli, the island's capital. Witnesses said she seemed happy, dancing and drinking with friends. There was no public sign that anything was wrong, but that emotional call stood out to her family. It was unlike her. The next morning, August 30th, something went terribly wrong. A passing boat saw something hanging from the back of the Mayan Queen IV. It was Sinead. She was unconscious but still alive, tangled in rope. Crew members quickly cut her down and called for help. She was airlifted to a hospital in Athens, but she died on the way. At the time of the incident, only the crew was on the yacht. Baleares had left 3 days earlier and later attended a public event in Mexico without making any comments. The case immediately attracted global attention. Investigators boarded the yacht and took its security footage, which reportedly captured Sinead's final moments. Greek authorities allowed the yacht to depart after conducting interviews and reviewing security footage, but the key video was reportedly never provided to the coroner for full examination. The official cause of death was ruled as hanging by coroner Ilias Bogiokas, but even he wasn't convinced that this was the full story. He noted that Sinead had no substances in her system, showed no signs of injury or a struggle, and had been mentally alert. Still, he said something felt off, possibly that someone had emotionally pressured her. Sinead's family pushed for answers. Their lawyer stated they believed she was emotionally stable and excited to see her family. They wanted to know who she argued with, what triggered that emotional phone call, and why it took so long for her to receive help. They were also concerned that the yacht wasn't fully searched and that important evidence, like the video footage, was withheld from investigators. The night before, she had been out celebrating, appearing cheerful, but she also called home clearly upset. The contrast between those moments added to the confusion. Did something happen between the time she left the bar and the moment she was found? Did she feel threatened? Investigators reviewed her phone messages and checked for signs of a struggle, but found no clear answers. The yacht's camera footage remains unreleased. And while officials leaned toward the idea that she may have taken her own life, her family and the coroner questioned whether she may have tried to resist. Sinead's sudden death shocked her followers in the yachting world. Friends and influencers posted tributes, remembering her as full of life. In her final Instagram post, she wrote about learning a Polish word, niebieski, meaning blue, during a jet ski ride. It had become her favorite word. But behind the images of adventure and beauty, something went terribly wrong, and the truth about Sinead McNamara's final hours remains locked away. Somewhere between a disturbing phone call, a luxury yacht, and an unanswered investigation. It was November 28, 1981, near California's Catalina Island. Natalie Wood, a 43-year-old award-nominated actress, had boarded the yacht Splendor for a weekend trip. She was joined by her husband, actor Robert Wagner, her Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken, and the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern. The getaway was supposed to be quiet and relaxing, but overnight something went wrong. By the next morning, Natalie's body was found floating in the water. She was dressed in a nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. For years, her death was considered a tragic accident, but the story behind it is far more complicated and still unresolved. Natalie Wood was born Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko on July 20, 1938 in San Francisco. Her mother, Maria, strongly believed in a fortune-teller's warning that her daughter would be famous, but should always stay away from dark water. Natalie became famous as a child, starring in Miracle on 34th Street by age 8. She later earned multiple Oscar nominations, including one for Rebel Without a Cause. She dated big names like Elvis Presley and had a long on-and-off relationship with Robert Wagner. They married in 1957, divorced 5 years later, then remarried in 1972. Together, they had a daughter. By the early 1980s, Natalie's career had slowed, but she remained well-known. She had just finished filming Brainstorm with Christopher Walken, and some on set believed they had grown unusually close. This led to rumors that created tension between her and Wagner. The Thanksgiving weekend trip in 1981 was meant to be peaceful, but according to Davern and others, things were tense from the beginning. Davern claimed Wagner was uneasy about how much time Natalie and Walken spent together. On the island, Natalie and Walken stayed at a bar for hours before Wagner arrived, reportedly already angry. That night, the group had dinner at Doug's Harbor Reef. Witnesses remembered drinks flowing and someone breaking a glass during an argument. Around 10 p.m., they returned to the yacht. That's when things escalated. According to Davern, the group kept drinking on board. At one point, Wagner accused Walken of getting too close to Natalie and smashed a wine bottle on the table. Walken walked off to his cabin while Natalie and Wagner returned to theirs. Davern then heard shouting from the deck, followed by silence. When he checked, Natalie was gone. Wagner said she had taken the dinghy, but Davern found that strange. Natalie was known to be afraid of water and wouldn't have left on her own. Davern suggested turning on the lights or calling for help, but said Wagner refused. Authorities weren't contacted until 1:30 a.m., over 4 hours later. At 8 a.m. the next day, Natalie's body was found about a mile from the boat. A dinghy was also located nearby. Her autopsy showed bruises and a facial cut, but her death was ruled accidental drowning. However, many close to Natalie doubted this. Her sister Lana said Natalie would never go near the water alone at night. Over time, witnesses began sharing stories that contradicted the original investigation. In 2011, Davern admitted he hadn't told the full truth earlier. He now believed Wagner was involved. A woman on a nearby boat claimed to have heard a woman screaming for help between 11 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. Another witness, who was 17 at the time, said he heard yelling and cries from the water. Other stories also raised questions. One woman said she saw Wagner act aggressively toward Natalie years earlier. Another witness remembered Natalie showing up frightened at their home in the 1950s, saying she feared what Wagner might do. These statements caused authorities to reopen the case in 2011. In 2012, Natalie's cause of death was updated to drowning and other undetermined factors. By 2018, Wagner was officially named a person of interest. Investigators noted his story had changed and didn't align with other witness accounts. Lieutenant John Corina said Wagner was the last person seen with Natalie and that his story didn't add up. Wagner, now 95, has never spoken to investigators since being named a person of interest. He denies any wrongdoing. Walken, meanwhile, cooperated. In a past interview, he described the situation as a terrible accident, but he has never offered many details. The case remains open. No one has been charged, but those closest to Natalie continue to search for answers. After 4 decades, what really happened to Natalie Wood on that yacht still isn't clear. It was early 2024 in Sydney, Australia. Lixin Wang, a 60-year-old millionaire, had agreed to spend the night on a yacht with her on-and-off partner, 56-year-old Peter Ray. The yacht, named Taloha, was a 47-foot luxury boat docked off Camaret in Sydney's lower North Shore. It was worth around $250,000 and had been Peter's passion project for over a year. Peter was a plumber who loved sailing. For the past 18 months, he had been restoring Taloha with plans to race it in Airlie Beach Race Week in Queensland. He was also planning a major life change. According to his ex-wife Andrea, Peter, who shared 3 adult children with her, was ready to start over. Despite their separation, she said he remained a dedicated father. Lixin Wang had a very different background. She had owned several adult businesses in Sydney, including the Flamingo Club and Xanadu Heaven in Bondi. Her businesses made her wealthy, but also came with controversy. Several former employees accused her of mistreatment, saying she pressured staff to work without pay. One former worker also claimed Wang hid key details from clients about staff identities. The Flamingo Club had previously been owned by Luke Nesbitt, who was later jailed for over 3 years after being caught with nearly 500 grams of a banned substance. After his arrest, Wang reportedly took over the club. Besides running these venues, Wang also owned a massage business under her name. She sold the property it operated from for over $16 million just months before it shut down. The home had 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and overlooked the water. She had bought it 10 years earlier for just under $10 million. It's believed Wang owned several other properties throughout Sydney. Even with her financial success, her business practices often came under question. When the Flamingo Club closed, some former employees said she still owed them large amounts of money. On a Monday, Wang and Ray arrived at the marina separately and boarded Taloha for what was expected to be a peaceful getaway. But by Wednesday night, both had gone silent. No one had heard from them in 2 days. Worried, a friend of Ray's contacted emergency services. Around 9 p.m., police arrived at the boat, which was anchored near Tunks Park. A strong smell inside led them to call in firefighters wearing breathing gear in case of a gas leak. Inside the main cabin, authorities found both Wang and Ray lying side by side, unresponsive. There were no visible injuries, no blood, and no weapons. The scene was treated as suspicious. Investigators found illegal substances and other troubling items on board, triggering a full forensic review. Gas cylinders were removed from the boat, and officials began looking into possible carbon monoxide poisoning. Experts said a boat with a closed cabin and faulty gas system could easily fill with harmful gas, especially during cold weather, without anyone realizing. A boating expert explained that vessels like Taloha require a gas safety check every 10 years. If the system had failed and the cabin had been shut, it could have created a dangerous situation. People nearby reported hearing the generator running for nearly 2 full days, but no one saw anyone coming or going from the boat. Both Ray's and Wang's cars were still parked at the marina, suggesting they never left the yacht. Investigators believe their deaths happened sometime between Monday night and early Wednesday. Police called the case suspicious, not due to signs of foul play, but because the cause of death wasn't clear. Authorities are now waiting for toxicology and post-mortem results to understand what really happened. Adding to the mystery was a strange connection from Wang's past. Months before a tragic incident at a Bondi Mall, the person involved had tried to apply for a job at the Flamingo Club. The manager rejected the application, finding it unusual. Although Wang wasn't directly involved, it was another strange link to her business. Ray had simply been focused on finishing Taloha and starting a new chapter. But what should have been a fresh beginning ended with questions no one can yet answer. For now, the deaths of Lixin Wang and Peter Ray remain unsolved.